Hello there everybody, hello pixel pushers. This is Sadiq Hussain here with another Affinity Photo tutorial. This time, as you can see here, we're going to be creating some custom bokeh. Now what do we mean by that? First of all, just a quick clarification, just in case there's somebody out there that doesn't know. I'm sure many of the viewers here do. What's bokeh? Well, bokeh is a Japanese word for something that's out of focus, essentially. So when you get pinpoints of light, like these lights in the background, when you put them out of focus by focusing something on the foreground and you have a shallow depth of field, then those pinpoints of lights go out of focus and you get discs of light. And the overlay and the color and the size of the discs of light depends on a variety of factors: the original light source, the lens that you're using, what the widest aperture is that you're using, how far away you are from the lights, how far away are you from the foreground subject, and so on and so forth. So that can vary. Okay, the color obviously will vary depending on the color of the source light and how the light bounces around in the lens as well through diffraction and so on. And custom bokeh is, creating your own bokeh. So let's just go to this image first of all. That's got bokeh, and these are actually sort of hexagonal shape, not circles, because of the nature of the aperture in that particular older lens is given us not a perfect circle. These are naturally occurring discs of light or hexagonal points of light that have been blurred. You can see here as well because of the nature of the lens that are used. Now these were actually there when we took that photograph of that candle, so these lights in the background were blurred out because I focused on the candle. These bokeh were not there, so if I show you what I've actually done, that's really how the photograph was taken. So no bokeh, no nothing, and just lights on its own. But if I wanted to put some lights on, how do we go about doing that? So that's what this tutorial is about. So let's make a start then. So first of all, we clearly need to have some source of bokeh lights in the first place. So what I would recommend that you do, either you could get them from the stock image library here in Affinity Photo. Try one of the two stock libraries, but if we just say bokeh and see what we come up with, and you should get a number of images, say something like that, and that'll do it, or something like that. So you'll be able to get that. But what I've got here are actually photographs that I've taken. Normally this time of the year is perfect at Christmas time because of course you've got Christmas lights on Christmas trees indoors and outdoors. You have lots of lights up in city centres and town centres. So go out, take some, to purposely put it out of blur, out of focus, sorry, so blur the lights, and then take plenty of photographs with different of different colors and sizes and distances, and then you'll have a stock library of bokeh lights like these. These are just two examples that we're going to use here. Okay, so we're going to put it on here. So what do we do? Essentially what we're going to do, we're going to copy and paste a layer from here. So I've already duplicated that layer just by right clicking and duplicate. It's always a good principle to do that all the time, although it's not entirely necessary. And what we're going to do is make sure that duplicate is highlighted and just do Command and C on a Mac, or Control and C, just to copy and paste. So I'm just going to paste it here by going to Edit and Paste. Just a straightforward paste, and if we click on the move tool, we can now see that image. Now clearly what we want to do is to reorientate that, because one's in portrait mode and one's in landscape mode. Okay, so you choose what you think is best, works for your image. But if I do what I did in the other one, in fact I'm going to flip this. No, I'm not going to flip it. I'm going to leave it as it is. So I'm just change the size of it, and I'm going to put it up to, say, about there. Okay, and just to see the positioning, if you highlight that layer that you've just copied across and just reduce the opacity, just so you can see how does it interfere with the candle. And of course we'll talk about that interference with the candle in a moment. So I think about there is right. It does overlap the candle a little bit that we're going to address, but it doesn't affect it massively. So we can increase the opacity of that again. And what we want to do is to change the blend mode of that layer with that layer. And one of the best ones you can do is screen mode, because that gets rid of all the dark and leaves the light spots. And of course the lights are light in color, so that's what we want to keep. So that is blending with that layer with the screen blend mode. Okay, now of course we still need to erase these, and the best way is to apply a mask. So as long as you've got that layer selected, the one that you've placed on top, you don't want these bokeh lights to be in front of the candle. In theory they should be behind because they're way off in the distance. Okay, so what we need to do is to add a mask. So if we go to the bottom here of the layers palette, add mask, it automatically adds a mask as a child layer of that main layer. And what we need to do is paint with black. So if we go to the paint brush, and all we want is a bog standard brush, sorry, not a bog brush, but a bog standard brush. So it's a little bit of toilet humor there. But if we double click that and we just change the size of it, and now something to remember here when you're using the brush is that you don't want the hardness to be 100%, because that'll give you a hard edge to the brush, as you can see, and that really won't help. So you want to reduce the hardness right the way down, certainly around about 20%, maybe a bit less. And also the flow. The flow really is, if you think of applying paint, is how much is it applying with each stroke. So again, you don't want that to be high, because otherwise the brush will act very harshly and it'll give you discernible edges. So you want to bring it down. Try it, but you certainly want to bring it down to around 20%. And then you want to paint with black, which is what it'll default to when you click on the paintbrush when you're on the mask. Okay, so make sure you got the mask clicked, not anything else, otherwise it won't work. So you're painting with black. Remember what I always say, black blocks, white reveals. So if black blocks, that means that painting with a black paintbrush will block the effect of that layer that's sitting on top of that layer. So effectively it means it erases that bokeh out. So now when I paint with it, it's going to erase out and then reveal the candle underneath. Now obviously do the quick bit, the center bit, fairly quickly, and you will have to go over it several times, not because you've got the opacity turned down, but because you've got the flow turned down. Okay, but that helps to sell the effect. Okay, once you've done that, then obviously zoom in, reduce the size of the brush, keep the same brush, and then just go as close to the edge as you can. It's basically like as if you're rubbing it out with an eraser. Okay, and clearly you'd want to take a bit of time over it so that you're doing it really carefully, but as you can see, that's working very well. Once that's revealing, in actual fact, is the original layer underneath the candle layer, and that's fine because that's exactly what we want. But then the screen blend mode is there for the other parts of the image around here, so that works fine. So all we're doing is revealing, because the candle underneath was quite dark, and by putting on that bokeh layer on top, it's lightened it. So it's just bringing it back to its original, which you'll see in a moment once we... And then we need to just make sure we do it on the wick as well, just in case, in fact, there is a little bit of bokeh that has overlapped on that. When we placed that bokeh layer, I did position it so it had a minimal effect on the candle, but of course it's still going to have some effect. Okay, it doesn't matter about the through here, because you will see a little bit of the bokeh as you would naturally if you were photographing it with the actual bokeh. You would expect that, so I won't worry too much about that. And I think that's pretty much done. Let's just center that. I don't think we need to do anything there. So that's great. Let's just turn that top layer off. There's a candle, there's the layer, and just turn it on and off to see if you've got to use the black paintbrush on the mask anywhere else. I don't think so. And down here, see what I've made a mistake there. I've gone over the edge with the black brush by doing that, and that's obviously taking a little bit of the bokeh away. And all you do is just switch, flip it over to white, and white reveals black blocks. So it actually reveals the layer above again. So as long as you do it carefully and do it to the edge, you can put that effect back again. Always bring it back to black just in case you need to do more. And I think that's done. We would call that done, but let's put another a layer, some more bokeh onto it. So again, I've duplicated that layer already, but that's all you'd need to do. And when you just do copy and paste back to that layer, in fact, we'll do edit from the menu and then paste it from there. And again, we might, oops, that's a mistake. Let's just go back. Okay, what we need to do is move. I was a bit trigger happy with the mouse there. Again, position it where you think you want these bokeh, and you can increase the size of them, because you're going to get rid of most of them. So you might want to make them a bit smaller. Just position them there maybe. Again, reduce the opacity of that layer temporarily, just so you can see where you're positioning them. So this is replicating the image I showed you at the beginning, but of course, you know, you could change it, position it, but I'm going to just position it there, and then turn the opacity back up again. And then again, we want to make sure we apply a mask to that. So again, click on mask. So that's a separate mask to this layer. Select the mask. Make sure you select the brush tool, and it defaults to black again. Increase the size of the brush. And now we're going to paint out the bits that we don't need of that top layer. And again, remember, because the flow is right down and the hardness is right down, it'll just take a few strokes to get rid of most of it, but it's worth persevering. So do the bulk of it with a big brush, and then of course you would then go in and fine tune it with a smaller brush, and just take your time. And again, if you make a mistake and you go over the actual bokeh lights, you can just switch colors to white, and white reveals, and you can paint it back in again, so to speak. So it's that simple. Using a mask, it really gives you yes, you could use the eraser tool in effect to erase the pixels that you don't want, but once you've erased them, to put them back again is more of a chore than just painting with white. Okay, so there are always a variety of ways of doing anything, but this is one of the better methods. So again, you would just take a bit of time just to make sure you got that accurate. But that's okay. I wouldn't worry too much, because you can massage this. You can push these pixels about to alter the nature of them through an adjustment layer, of course, and just apply to one or more. And by doing that, that'll allow you to hide some of the defects. So that's not a major thing. So here we go, we're nearly there. Okay, and yeah, I could go back and paint with white there, but let's not worry too much about that for now. So we're almost done. Now that text up or on custom bokeh, that was obviously just for the introduction. You wouldn't obviously put that text on there. Well, you might do, depends obviously what you want to demonstrate. But you can put some text on there clearly if you wanted to. Relevant text that wouldn't be relevant for something that you'd be doing for yourself. This is obviously for a demonstration. So there we go. And yeah, you could go in and really fine tune it. Always zoom in, zoom back out, and take your time over it. Okay, that's it. I think we're done there. Okay, now just make sure that if you wanted to reduce the opacity of that, you could do. So again, by reducing the opacity, you're hiding some of that paintwork that you've just done. You could do that, and you also want to match the luminosity of these with these, and if these are smaller, you're sort of assuming they're further away, so you wouldn't want them to be brighter, so maybe you could tone them down a bit. And of course you could add an adjustment layer here. So let's just say if we wanted to, on this one, we wanted to add an adjustment layer of hue and saturation and luminosity. So maybe we wanted to it's the global, and we wanted to just change. Now that's changing the whole image. That's not what we want to do. So let me just delete that. It's because when you put in an adjustment layer, where it positions itself is really key. Now this is positioned at the top of the layer stack, so that means that it affects everything below it, and we don't want that. We only want it to affect this part, so it's this layer here. So again, if we drag it down and put it as a daughter layer with that, so it's grouped with that layer along with the mask as well, that means now when I change the luminosity, it only affects these bokeh discs themselves. So again, you could change it to see what suits, and then you could change the saturation of them, and you could obviously change the color, the nature of them. So choose something that looks, that blends in. Oh, I'm going to have it a nice yellow there. Okay, and I think that's all it needs. And then if you find that the edges haven't quite lined up because you cut and pasted a different layer, you could crop it, of course. In fact, the layers have lined up very well here. But let me just suggest that if I was to take that layer, which is this bokeh, and I didn't quite align it by just moving it. Well, the reason is because it's much larger than the other layer. But let's say if it was a little bit, it wasn't right, and I needed to disguise the edges, then one of the things you could do, what I would suggest that you do, which is what I did when I demonstrated, it showed you the end result of the image, is put a border around it. But to do that, you really must combine all these layers, do that as a last task, so that you just basically merge down. So you're merging everything, and it becomes one composite image. Okay, so now you've merged all the layers, and we've done this before. I'll leave a link in the description to the other video. But if we go to effects, we go to outline, and we change it to white. That's a choice you can make, what color you want it, but I think white would stand out better. You want it on the inside of the image, and then just move that slider so that we've got a lovely appropriate contrasting border. Okay, and that also helps to sell the edges the way you've done them, because it just makes it look natural. And there we go, bang, done. Custom bokeh. We've started. We'll just take this history slider. That's where we started. we added our own bokeh, positioned it, used the brush to block out the effect on the mask, combined everything and put a border around it. So give that a go. Give us a like, and also any comments and feedback, any suggestions what you'd like me to cover next time would be most welcome, and I'll try and cover those. Thank you very much for watching. I do appreciate your time, and I hope you found that useful and you learned something. Thanks very much.